I am Athena Pierce, 32 years old, and until last month, I was just a finance director at Horizon Technologies. After 7 years of loyalty and countless late nights, I watched the CEO's nephew Bradley slash my bonus by 70% while his friends got raises. What he never expected was that I knew every detail of our financials, including the insurance coverage he gambled with before our $279M investor call. The board still talks about what happened next. If you are watching this video right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are tuning in from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how one moment of courage saved a company from disaster. My journey at Horizon Technologies began right after I completed my MBA from Cornell University. I was eager to prove myself in the tech industry, and Horizon was the perfect opportunity. It was a mid-sized tech company that had developed revolutionary software for healthcare data management. When I started, we had about 200 employees and a promising future, but we were still fighting for our place in a competitive market. I started as a financial analyst, then moved to senior analyst, and eventually worked my way up to finance director. It was not an easy climb, especially as a woman in a predominantly male industry. I had to work twice as hard, stay twice as late, and be twice as precise as my male colleagues. But I loved the challenge and was passionate about our company's mission to make healthcare data more accessible and secure. Richard Hammond, our original CEO and founder, recognized my dedication early on. He was an old-school leader who valued competence above office politics. Athena, he once told me, "Numbers never lie, and neither do you. That is why I trust you with our financial future." Those words meant everything to me, and I lived up to them every day. Under Richard's leadership, Horizon had a culture of transparency and collaboration. Our executive meetings were open forums where ideas were valued based on merit, not on who proposed them. We shared both successes and failures, learning from each experience as a united team. This approach had guided us through difficult times and had been key to our growth. My role as finance director meant I oversaw all aspects of the company's financial health. I managed our budget, supervised the accounting team, ensured tax compliance, and perhaps most importantly, handled our relationships with investors and insurance providers. I knew every clause in our policies, every detail of our financial obligations, and every dollar that flowed in and out of our accounts. Madison Taylor was our HR director and became my closest ally at Horizon. We had started at the company within months of each other and had supported each other through countless challenges. Madison was the kind of friend who would bring coffee to my office during budget season without being asked, and who always had my back in executive meetings. James Rodriguez, our Chief Technology Officer, was another valuable ally. As the technical genius behind our software, James was respected throughout the industry. Though quiet in social settings, he was fiercely loyal to the company and to those who put its interests first. We had worked closely on numerous projects, ensuring that our financial resources were allocated effectively to support technical innovation. Then there was Eleanor Blackwell, one of our longest-serving board members. A former healthcare executive herself, Eleanor had a reputation for asking the tough questions that needed asking. She had always respected my work and had been a subtle mentor to me over the years. In this business, she once advised me, "Integrity is your only non-renewable resource. Guard it with your life." Our board of directors was a mix of old guard and new blood. Some, like Eleanor, had been with us since the beginning. Others represented venture capital firms or strategic partners who had invested in our growth. All of them expected results, transparency, and sound financial management. The past 2 years had been particularly successful for Horizon. Our healthcare data platform had been adopted by 3 major hospital networks, and our revenue had grown by 62%. We had expanded our team to over 500 employees and moved to a larger office space in downtown Boston. Industry analysts were finally taking notice, and we were regularly featured in tech publications as a company to watch. This growth had positioned us for our biggest opportunity, yet a $279 million investment round that would fuel our expansion into international markets and allow us to develop new product lines. The investor call for this round was scheduled for the end of the quarter, and everyone knew how crucial it was to our future. Years of work had led to this moment, and we could not afford any missteps. Richard Hammond had been leading the preparations for this investment round personally. Every department was involved in creating detailed projections, risk assessments, and growth strategies. As finance director, I was at the center of it all, ensuring that our numbers were solid and that we could deliver on the promises we were making to potential investors. Victoria Harrington, the CEO of Artemis Capital, was our lead potential investor. Known throughout the financial world as brilliantly perceptive and absolutely uncompromising, Victoria had a reputation for backing winners, but also for zero tolerance for dishonesty or incompetence. If we secured her support, others would follow. If we lost her confidence, the entire investment round might collapse. None of us could have predicted how dramatically our careful preparations would be disrupted, or how the company's future would soon rest on a single moment of truth during that investor call. But before I get to that, I need to tell you about how everything changed when Richard Hammond had a heart attack and his nephew Bradley stepped in as interim CEO. It happened during a regular Tuesday morning executive meeting. Richard was presenting our quarterly results when he suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed. The next few hours were a blur of ambulances, hospital waiting rooms, and shocked conversations. Richard had suffered a major heart attack. He would survive, thankfully, but his doctors were adamant he needed to step away from the company for at least 6 months. The board called an emergency meeting that same evening. I expected them to appoint our Chief Operating Officer, Diane Foster, as interim CEO. She was experienced, respected, and knew every aspect of our operations. Instead, they announced that Bradley Westfield, Richard's nephew, would step into the role. I later learned that Richard himself had suggested this arrangement during a brief period of consciousness at the hospital. Whether it was the medication or family loyalty that prompted this recommendation, we will never know. Bradley arrived the following Monday, dressed in an expensive suit and projecting confidence. At 34, he was just a couple of years older than me, with an MBA from Harvard and 3 years at a prestigious consulting firm on his resume. What he lacked was any actual experience running a company or any deep understanding of our industry, but he compensated for these gaps with unwavering self-assurance. "I am here to take Horizon to the next level," he announced in his first company-wide address. "My uncle built a great foundation, but the tech world moves fast. We need fresh thinking and bold moves to stay competitive." Many employees were impressed by his charisma and energy. I was reserving judgment, but already noticing red flags in his approach. Within his first week, Bradley had rearranged the executive floor, giving himself a larger office with a view of the Boston skyline. He also brought in 3 former classmates as special advisors without clearly defined roles. Alexander Wright became his chief strategist, Thomas Parker was named innovation consultant, and Derek Coleman took on the vague title of executive advisor. All 3 received salaries comparable to our senior directors, despite their limited experience. Our executive meeting structure changed immediately. Instead of open discussions, Bradley instituted a new format where he spoke first. His advisors contributed next, and only then were other executives invited to comment, often with limited time. He frequently interrupted presentations with statements like, "Let us cut to the chase," or "I need you to bottom line it for me," particularly when female executives were speaking. My first direct conflict with Bradley came during a financial review meeting in his second week. I presented our quarterly projections, which showed solid growth, but also highlighted some areas of concern, particularly around cash flow management, given our expansion plans. "These projections seem unnecessarily conservative," Bradley remarked, leaning back in his chair. "Where is the ambition here? We need to show stronger numbers for the investment round." "These projections are based on actual performance data and realistic growth patterns," I explained. "I cannot ethically present more aggressive numbers without evidence to support them." Bradley's smile did not reach his eyes. Athena, in business, sometimes you need to project confidence to create reality. Why do you think they call it a projection? Let us see a revised version with at least 15% higher revenue forecasts by tomorrow. I stood my ground. I am happy to review the projections again, but I will only present numbers I can defend with data. Anything else would be misleading to our investors. The room fell silent. Bradley stared at me for a long moment before moving on to the next agenda item. But after the meeting, Alexander Wright, his strategist, approached me in the hallway. Bradley is just trying to energize the company, he said with a condescending smile. Try to be a team player, okay? No one likes the person who always says no. As weeks passed, the company atmosphere transformed dramatically. The collaborative environment Richard had cultivated was replaced by competitive individualism and fear. People spoke less freely in meetings, worried about contradicting Bradley or his inner circle. Several longtime employees resigned, citing differences in vision in their exit interviews. Madison kept me informed about the changing dynamics from her HR perspective. People are scared, she confided during one of our coffee breaks. Bradley has been having a lot of closed-door meetings, and rumors are spreading that he is planning major restructuring without consulting department heads. James was experiencing similar issues in the technology department. He is pushing us to accelerate our development timeline for the international version, he told me privately. When I tried to explain the security testing we need to complete, first he said we should move fast and break things like other tech companies. He does not seem to understand that in healthcare data, breaking things can mean breaking federal regulations. I tried multiple times to address my concerns professionally with Bradley. I prepared detailed analyses of our financial situation, documented the risks of accelerated timelines, and proposed alternative approaches that would balance ambition with prudence. Each time I was met with dismissive responses. This is why my uncle's growth plateaued, he told me during one particularly frustrating meeting. Too much caution, not enough vision. The board brought me in to shake things up, not maintain the status quo. In reality, the board had brought him in as a temporary measure out of respect for Richard, but pointing this out would only escalate tensions. Instead, I focused on doing my job with integrity while documenting every concerning decision. Little did I know how crucial this documentation would soon become. 3 months into Bradley's tenure as interim CEO, annual performance review season arrived. This was typically a positive time at Horizon, as Richard had always been generous with recognizing employee contributions. The company had a structured bonus system based on both individual performance and company results. With our strong financial performance over the past year, most employees were expecting healthy bonuses. My own review was scheduled with Bradley on a Thursday afternoon. I came prepared with a comprehensive report of my department's achievements. We had implemented a new financial reporting system that increased efficiency by 30%, successfully navigated an IRS audit with 0 issues, and identified cost-saving measures that added $2 million to our bottom line. Bradley barely glanced at my report. Yes, very thorough as always, Athena. Now let us talk about areas for improvement. He proceeded to critique minor issues that had never been raised before, like my communication style being too direct and my resistance to progressive approaches. Then came the bombshell. Given budget constraints and the need to reallocate resources to growth initiatives, I am adjusting your annual bonus, Bradley stated flatly. You will receive 30% of the target amount. I was stunned. A 70% cut to my expected bonus, which I had already factored into my annual financial planning. I do not understand, I said, maintaining my composure. The company exceeded its financial targets. My department met or exceeded all objectives. What budget constraints are you referring to? Bradley shuffled some papers on his desk. It is a holistic decision based on multiple factors. The bonus pool needs to be distributed strategically to incentivize breakthrough performance and innovation, not just maintenance of existing systems. After leaving his office in a daze, I ran into Madison in the hallway. One look at my face told her everything. You too, she asked quietly. We found an empty conference room and compared notes. Madison had also received a 70% bonus cut, as had several other female executives. Meanwhile, we learned from James that his bonus had been reduced by only 20%, and Bradley's inner circle of advisors had actually received performance bonuses despite having been with the company for mere months. "This cannot be coincidence," Madison said, her HR instincts on high alert. "I need to look into the overall bonus distribution pattern." A few days later, Madison confirmed our suspicions. Female executives had their bonuses cut by an average of 65%, while male executives averaged reductions of only 25%. The most significant cuts targeted those who had questioned Bradley's decisions in meetings. "He is claiming budget constraints, but that is simply not true," I told Madison. "Our bonus pool was fully funded based on company performance. I should know I prepared the budget myself." My financial analyst training kicked in, and I began digging deeper into recent financial decisions. Working late into the evening, I reviewed every financial document I could access, looking for patterns or inconsistencies. What I found disturbed me deeply. Bradley had redirected significant resources to nebulous strategic initiatives managed by his inner circle. He had approved expensive office renovations and company cars for himself and his advisors. Most concerning, he had modified several financial reports before they went to the board, presenting more optimistic projections than our actual data supported. But the most troubling discovery came when I reviewed our insurance coverage documentation. As finance director, I had always ensured that our operations were properly insured, particularly our software products that handled sensitive healthcare data. Any failure in our systems could result in massive liability, which is why comprehensive coverage was essential. Bradley had recently directed our insurance department to switch providers for our professional liability and cybersecurity coverage, citing better rates. The summary documents indicated similar coverage, but when I dug into the details, I discovered alarming gaps, particularly for our new international product lines that were central to our expansion plans. The following day, I discreetly approached our insurance specialist, Rachel Williams. "Rachel, I noticed some changes in our coverage structure. Was there a specific reason we switched providers right before our international launch?" Rachel looked uncomfortable. Bradley insisted on it. I raised concerns about the coverage gaps, especially for the new products, but he said the cost savings were worth it and that we could address any gaps after the investment round. This was a massive red flag. We were preparing to tell investors we were ready for international expansion, but our new products would not be properly insured. If any data breach or system failure occurred, the company could face crippling liability without adequate coverage. I spent the next week gathering more information, being careful not to alert Bradley or his advisors. I discovered that the cost savings from the reduced insurance coverage had been redirected to fund pet projects for Bradley's inner circle. The picture becoming clear was deeply troubling. Bradley was cutting corners on essential protections while presenting a rosy picture to the board and prospective investors. One evening, I tried one last time to address my concerns directly with Bradley. I requested a private meeting and carefully presented the insurance coverage issues without revealing how much I knew about his other financial manipulations. "I am concerned about our coverage for the international product launch," I explained. "There are significant gaps that could expose the company to serious liability." Bradley dismissed my concerns with a wave of his hand. "You are being excessively cautious again, Athena. The coverage is adequate for our needs, and we can adjust it after securing the investment. Right now, every dollar counts towards showing strong fundamentals." "But that is precisely my point," I persisted. "If investors are expecting full coverage and we do not have it, we are misrepresenting our risk profile." Bradley's demeanor suddenly changed, his casual dismissiveness, replaced by cold anger. "Listen carefully. The investment round is happening in 2 weeks. Nothing is going to derail it, especially not some theoretical insurance concerns. Do your job, support the company direction, and stop looking for problems where none exist. Are we clear?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I turned to leave, Bradley added, "And Athena, all materials for the investor call will go through me for final approval. No exceptions." As I walked back to my office, I knew I had reached a crucial decision point. I could either stay silent and be complicit in what increasingly looked like financial misrepresentation, or I could speak up and likely lose my job. The investment call was approaching quickly, and I had very little time to decide what to do. The weekend before the investor call, I came into the empty office to review the final presentation materials. I needed complete quiet and privacy for what I was about to do. With most employees enjoying their Saturday, the building was silent, except for the hum of air conditioning and the occasional ping of the elevator. I started by methodically comparing the insurance documents from our previous provider with the new policy Bradley had insisted on. The differences were subtle, but significant. The old policy provided comprehensive coverage for data breaches, system failures, and professional liability across all our products and services. The new policy appeared similar at first glance, but contained critical exclusions buried in the fine print. Specifically, the new policy excluded coverage for any products that had not undergone a complete third-party security audit. Our international versions, being rushed to market under Bradley's accelerated timeline, had not completed these audits. This meant that our flagship expansion products, which were central to the investment pitch, had effectively zero coverage for the risks most likely to occur. I pulled up the investor presentation Bradley had finalized. Slide 23 stated explicitly, "All products and services fully insured against operational risks with comprehensive coverage." This was a direct misrepresentation of our actual situation. To confirm my understanding, I called my law school friend Sophia Chen, who specialized in corporate insurance law. Without revealing specific company details, I described the situation hypothetically. "Your hypothetical CEO is playing with fire," Sophia said after hearing the scenario. "Presenting incomplete insurance coverage as comprehensive to investors is not just unethical, it potentially violates securities laws. If investors make decisions based on misrepresented risk profiles that could constitute fraud." "What about fiduciary responsibility?" I asked. "Executives have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of the company and its shareholders. Deliberately misrepresenting material facts to investors clearly violates that duty. If board members know and do nothing, they could be liable too." After thanking Sophia, I sat at my desk, contemplating the implications. This was not just about my bonus anymore. The entire company, hundreds of jobs, and our mission to improve healthcare data management were at risk because of Bradley's reckless decisions. I needed more perspectives before deciding how to proceed. I called James, our CTO, and asked if he could meet me at the office. An hour later, he arrived looking concerned. "What is so urgent that it could not wait until Monday?" he asked. I explained what I had discovered about the insurance coverage and showed him the relevant documents, including the misleading investor presentation slide. James's face grew grim as he examined the materials. "This is worse than you think," he said finally. "The reason those security audits have not been completed is that Bradley refused to allocate the necessary resources. My team warned him that the international versions needed additional security testing before deployment, especially for compliance with European data protection regulations. He told us to make it work with existing resources and focus on features, not hypothetical security concerns. So, not only are we uninsured, but the products themselves might have security vulnerabilities," I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. James nodded. "I cannot guarantee they are secure without completing the proper testing protocols. In healthcare data, that is like selling a car without testing the brakes." Next, I contacted Madison, who agreed to meet us at the office. When she arrived, I brought her up to speed on our discoveries. "This explains something that has been bothering me," she said. "We received complaints from the QA team about shortened testing cycles, but when I raised the issue with Bradley, he instructed me to handle it discreetly and not create any documentation that might unnecessarily alarm people." Madison, James, and I spent hours gathering and organizing evidence. We were careful to only access documents we were authorized to view in our respective roles, ensuring that our actions could not be construed as improper. We compiled emails, meeting notes, policy documents, and financial records that collectively painted a clear picture of the situation. As evening fell, we faced the ethical dilemma that would define our careers: speak up during the investor call and potentially save the company from disaster, or stay silent and be complicit in what could amount to fraud. "I could lose my job," I said, voicing the fear we all shared. "We all could," Madison agreed. "But could you live with yourself if you stayed silent and then watched the company implode when the truth eventually comes out? Because it will come out, one way or another." James, typically the quietest among us, spoke with unexpected conviction. "Richard built this company on integrity. Every line of code we write is meant to protect patient data and improve healthcare. If we let Bradley sacrifice that for short-term gain, everything we have worked for becomes meaningless." By midnight, our decision was made. We would prepare for the investor call with the complete and accurate information. If Bradley prevented us from speaking during the call itself, we would send our documented concerns to the board immediately afterward. It was a risk, but the alternative was unthinkable. The next few days were tense. Bradley seemed to sense something was amiss and became increasingly controlling. He limited access to the final presentation materials and announced that only he and his advisors would speak during the investor call. The rest of the executive team would be present, but would answer questions only if directly addressed by Bradley. Despite these obstacles, we continued our preparations. I created my own detailed notes on the actual state of our insurance coverage. James documented the security testing status of our products. Madison gathered information on the pattern of bonus cuts and resource allocation. Together, we were ready to provide a complete and accurate picture if given the opportunity. The night before the investor call, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Richard Hammond and how he had trusted me with the company's financial integrity. I thought about the hundreds of employees whose jobs might be at risk if this investment round failed due to discovered misrepresentations. And I thought about my own career, which might end tomorrow, regardless of which path I chose. By dawn, I was exhausted but resolved. Whatever happened, I would act with integrity. The morning of the investor call arrived with an almost surreal intensity. The executive floor buzzed with nervous energy as staff made last-minute preparations. Bradley had arranged for the call to take place in our largest conference room, which had been transformed overnight. Fresh flowers adorned the table, new audio-visual equipment had been installed, and breakfast catering was arranged on a side table. It looked more like a stage set than our usual working space. Bradley arrived at 7:30, impeccably dressed in a new suit. His inner circle, Alexander, Thomas, and Derek, followed close behind, all similarly attired. They immediately sequestered themselves in Bradley's office for what appeared to be a final rehearsal. I used this time to review my notes once more. I had distilled the complex insurance information into clear, concise points that anyone could understand. The documents supporting these points were organized in a folder beside me. I was as prepared as I could be, though my stomach churned with anxiety. Madison entered the conference room looking as though she had slept as little as I had. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "As ready as I will ever be." James joined us, his usual calm demeanor strained. "Bradley just told me I am only to answer technical questions if directly asked, and to keep it simple and positive. He made it clear there would be consequences for going off script." At 8:45, 15 minutes before the call, Bradley gathered the executive team in the conference room for final instructions. "This call is the culmination of months of work," he said, pacing at the head of the table. "Victoria Harrington and the Artemis Capital team will be evaluating every word, every number, and every response. Other major investors will be taking their cues from her reaction. The entire future of Horizon depends on making a perfect impression." He looked around the room, his gaze lingering on me. "I will lead the presentation. Alexander will cover strategic initiatives. Thomas will address innovation. and Derek will handle market analysis. Department heads will respond to specific questions in your areas if I direct them to you. Keep your answers brief, positive, and aligned with the materials provided. Are there any questions? No one spoke. The implied threat in his tone was unmistakable. Good, Bradley continued. Remember, we are presenting a united front today. Any internal disagreements remain internal. We will have time to address any concerns after securing this investment. At precisely 9 o'clock, the conference call system chimed. Our IT manager confirmed that all expected participants had joined, and Bradley began the call with practiced charm. Good morning, everyone. This is Bradley Westfield, Interim CEO of Horizon Technologies. On behalf of our entire team, I want to thank you for joining us today for this important discussion about Horizon's future. The next 30 minutes consisted of Bradley's polished presentation of Horizon's history, current success, and ambitious plans for international expansion. He spoke with complete confidence, presenting the accelerated timeline as a strategic advantage and glossing over any potential risks. The numbers he shared painted a picture of a company poised for explosive growth with minimal downside. Alexander, Thomas, and Derek each took their turns, reinforcing Bradley's narrative with complementary perspectives. Their presentations were smooth and clearly rehearsed, creating an impressive but increasingly distorted view of the company's position. As the presentation portion concluded, my anxiety peaked. The question and answer session would be my only opportunity to correct the record if necessary. Victoria Harrington was the first to speak. Her voice was cool and precise. Thank you for the comprehensive overview, Mr. Westfield. I have several questions, beginning with your international expansion timeline. It seems unusually aggressive for healthcare software deployment. How are you managing regulatory compliance and security testing within this accelerated framework? Bradley smiled. Excellent question, Victoria. We have streamlined our development process to eliminate redundancies while maintaining our high standards. Our technical team has adapted to the new timeline admirably. James Rodriguez, our CTO, can confirm that all critical testing protocols remain in place. James cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. We have prioritized testing resources to focus on critical components, he said carefully. However, I should note that comprehensive security audits for the international versions are still in the preliminary stages. Bradley quickly jumped in. What James means is that we have implemented a phased testing approach with the most critical security elements addressed first. This innovative approach allows us to maintain momentum while ensuring safety. Next question. Victoria was not so easily deflected. Before we move on, I would like clarification on your insurance coverage for these new products. Your materials indicate comprehensive coverage, but given the accelerated timeline and incomplete testing, how have you structured your liability protection? This was the moment. Bradley's presentation had explicitly misrepresented our insurance status, and Victoria had asked directly about it. I watched as Bradley prepared to respond with another evasion. Our risk management strategy is multifaceted, he began smoothly. We maintain comprehensive coverage across our product portfolio, with adjustments made as needed to balance protection with cost efficiency. Our financial team has determined this approach optimizes our resource allocation while ensuring appropriate safeguards. It was a masterclass in saying nothing with many words, but Victoria Harrington had not built her reputation by accepting vague reassurances. I appreciate the overview, but I would like specific details on the insurance coverage for your international products. Do they have the same level of coverage as your domestic offerings, particularly for data breaches and system failures? Bradley hesitated for a fraction of a second. The coverage structure is aligned with our overall risk management framework. We can provide detailed documentation after the call if you would like. Victoria's voice sharpened. Mr. Westfield, I need a direct answer. Are the new products fully insured against operational risks? Yes or no? The room fell silent. Bradley glanced around looking for support but found none. He turned to me with a look that was half command, half plea. Athena Pierce, our finance director, can address the specific details of our coverage. Athena, my heart pounded in my ears as all eyes turned to me. This was the moment of decision. With a deep breath, I chose integrity over career safety. Thank you for the question, Victoria. I believe in complete transparency with our investors, so I must clarify this point. The new international products do not currently have the comprehensive coverage indicated in the presentation materials. The policy Bradley recently switched to excludes products that have not completed third-party security audits, which our international versions have not yet undergone. This represents a significant, unaddressed risk that would leave the company fully exposed in case of data breaches or system failures in these markets. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel Bradley's glare without looking at him. Victoria's voice, when it finally came, was cold as ice. Let me make sure I understand correctly. The materials we received explicitly state that all products are fully insured, but you are now saying the international products which are central to this expansion plan have no coverage for the most likely risks they would face. That is correct, I confirmed. The previous policy provided comprehensive coverage, but it was changed 3 months ago. Despite recommendations from the finance and insurance departments, the gaps in coverage have not been addressed. Another investor broke in. What is the potential liability exposure if a data breach occurred in these uninsured markets? Given the sensitive nature of healthcare data and the stringent regulations in European markets, we would be looking at potential liability in the tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars, I answered truthfully. Victoria Harrington's next question cut through the tension like a knife. Mr. Westfield, who made the decision to present these products as fully insured when they clearly are not. Bradley attempted to regain control. There seems to be some confusion about the technical details of our coverage. I suggest we table this discussion and have our insurance specialists provide a detailed breakdown after the call. Victoria was not deterred. This is not a technical detail, Mr. Westfield. This is a material fact that directly impacts investment risk assessment. Her voice turned to address the broader call participants. I would like to speak with the board members present on this call. Eleanor Blackwell, our most experienced board member, spoke up. This is Eleanor Blackwell. Several board members are on the line. Victoria's question was direct and devastating. Who just gambled with our cash? Was the board aware that the company is presenting uninsured products as fully covered to potential investors of a $279 million round? The call erupted into confused conversations and demands for clarification. Bradley made increasingly desperate attempts to regain control, but the damage was done. The truth was out, and no amount of charisma or deflection could put it back in the box. After 15 chaotic minutes, Eleanor Blackwell interrupted. In light of this information, I move that we temporarily suspend this investor call. The board needs to convene immediately to address these concerns and provide accurate information to all potential investors. We will reschedule this call once we have conducted a thorough review. The motion was quickly seconded by another board member, and the call ended abruptly. As the line disconnected, the conference room fell into stunned silence. Bradley turned to me, his face contorted with fury. "What have you done?" he hissed. "You just destroyed this company's future." I met his gaze steadily. "No, Bradley. I just saved it from someone who was willing to build its future on lies." The moment the call ended, Bradley exploded. "You are fired," he shouted, pointing at me with a shaking finger. "Security will escort you from the building immediately. You will never work in this industry again. I will make sure of it." His advisor, Alexander, quickly intervened, placing a hand on Bradley's arm. "Not here," he muttered, gesturing toward the glass walls where employees were gathering, attracted by the commotion. Bradley composed himself with visible effort. "Have security escort Miss Pierce to her office to collect personal belongings. Then, off the premises," he instructed Derek coldly. "Her access to all systems is to be terminated immediately." As a security guard arrived to escort me, Eleanor Blackwell stepped forward. "That will not be necessary," she said firmly. Miss Pierce will not be leaving. In fact, the board requires her presence for the emergency meeting that will commence in 30 minutes. Bradley turned to Eleanor, incredulous. She deliberately undermined this company during a critical investor call. She needs to be removed immediately. Eleanor's expression was uncompromising. Mr. Westfield, the board is extremely concerned about what we just heard. No one will be removed from the premises until we have a complete understanding of the situation. That includes Miss Pierce, Mr. Rodriguez, and Miss Taylor, all of whom are required at the board meeting. The security guard looked uncertainly between Bradley and Eleanor before quietly retreating. The power dynamic had shifted palpably. The board meeting will begin in conference room B at 9:45, Eleanor continued. Mr. Westfield, please ensure all relevant documentation regarding the insurance coverage is available for review. Miss Sion, the 5 Eleanor. Pierce, please bring your supporting evidence as well. The next 30 minutes were a whirlwind of activity. Madison, James, and I quickly gathered our documentation and compared notes. Bradley and his advisors sequestered themselves in his office, occasionally emerging to make urgent phone calls. At precisely 9:45, we assembled in conference room B. The local board members were physically present, while others joined via video conference. Richard Hammond was notably absent, still recovering from his heart attack. Eleanor Blackwell opened the meeting with typical directness. We are here to address extremely serious concerns raised during the investor call. Victoria Harrington has informed me that Artemis Capital is suspending their investment consideration pending a complete review of Horizon's financial and operational status. Other investors have followed suit. The $279 million investment round is effectively on hold. Bradley attempted to seize control of the narrative. This is an unfortunate misunderstanding caused by Miss Pierce's inappropriate interjection during the call. The insurance situation is complex, but manageable, and could have been explained properly if she had followed protocol. Eleanor cut him off. Mr. Westfield, the investor materials explicitly state, and I quote, all products and services fully insured against operational risks with comprehensive coverage. Miss Pierce has indicated this is not accurate. We need to establish the facts before discussing anything else. For the next 2 hours, the board methodically reviewed the evidence. I presented the insurance documentation, showing clearly how the policy change had created coverage gaps for the international products. James detailed the security testing situation, confirming that the accelerated timeline had prevented completion of necessary audits. Madison provided context about the pattern of resource allocation and the irregular bonus distributions. Bradley's defenses crumbled as the complete picture emerged. His attempts to discredit us failed, as our documentation proved too thorough. When confronted with the slide that misrepresented the insurance coverage, he claimed it was a simplification for presentation purposes that would have been clarified later. Later would have been after investors committed $279 million based on inaccurate information, noted one board member pointedly. By early afternoon, the board had reached several conclusions. First, they voted unanimously to remove Bradley from his position as interim CEO effective immediately. His 3 advisors were also terminated. Second, they established a special committee to conduct a comprehensive review of all decisions made during Bradley's tenure. Third, they instructed the legal department to prepare accurate disclosure documents for investors. We need to contact Victoria Harrington directly, Eleanor said. We must demonstrate that the company is taking immediate corrective action and that these misrepresentations were isolated incidents, not reflective of Horizon's values or practices. The board asked me to join the call with Victoria, along with Eleanor and 2 other board members. Victoria's response was coolly professional, but uncompromising. I appreciate your transparency now, but the fact remains that we nearly based a major investment decision on materially inaccurate information. My confidence in Horizon has been significantly shaken. We understand completely, Eleanor responded, which is why we have taken immediate action to address the situation. We would like to reschedule the investor presentation once we have completed our review and can provide fully accurate information about our product's timeline and risk management approach. Victoria considered this. Before making any decisions, I want to speak directly with Richard Hammond. I also want an independent audit of your financial and operational status, conducted by a firm of our choosing. The board readily agreed to these conditions. Before ending the call, Victoria addressed me directly. Miss Pierce, your actions today reflect the kind of integrity that builds sustainable businesses. It could not have been easy to speak up in that situation. It was not, I admitted. But it was necessary. The following days were chaotic but purposeful. News of Bradley's removal spread quickly through the company, generating a mix of relief and anxiety. The board appointed our Chief Operating Officer, Diane Foster, as interim CEO while they considered longer-term options. A thorough audit of Bradley's decisions revealed additional concerning actions, including questionable consultant contracts with friends and misleading updates to the board about project statuses. The company's stock price took an immediate hit when a carefully worded press release announced changes in leadership due to strategic differences. Financial analysts speculated about internal problems, and competitors attempted to capitalize on the uncertainty. But under Diane's steady leadership, the company maintained operational stability. 1 week after the investor call, I received a request to visit Richard Hammond at his home. He had been briefed about the situation and wanted to speak with me personally. Despite still looking frail from his health crisis, Richard's mind was as sharp as ever. "I owe you an apology, Athena," he said, after I had taken a seat in his home office. "I put my nephew in a position he was not qualified for, and I put the company I built at risk because of family loyalty. It was a mistake that nearly destroyed everything we worked for." "You could not have known what would happen," I offered. Richard shook his head. "I should have known better. Bradley always sought shortcuts to success. I hoped responsibility would mature him, but instead he saw Horizon as a stepping stone for his ambitions." He looked at me directly. "Eleanor told me what you did during that investor call. It took remarkable courage." "I was just doing my job," I said simply. "No," Richard countered. "Your job would have been to stay silent and follow orders. You chose to do what was right instead of what was safe. That is integrity, and it is precisely what Horizon was built on." The following day, Richard requested a video call with the board and Victoria Harrington. Despite his weakened condition, he spoke with clarity and conviction about the company's founding principles and future direction. He personally guaranteed that the issues identified would be fully addressed before any international expansion proceeded. Victoria seemed impressed by Richard's candor and commitment. "I appreciate your straightforward approach, Richard. It reminds me why Artemis considered Horizon a worthy investment in the first place." By the end of the call, Victoria had agreed to postpone rather than cancel investment considerations, pending the completion of the independent audit and implementation of enhanced governance procedures. It was not a full victory, but it kept the door open for future funding. Throughout this period, I continued my work as finance director now, with the added responsibility of supporting the independent auditors and helping to restructure our financial reporting systems. The hours were long and the pressure intense, but there was a new sense of purpose and integrity in our work. Some days were harder than others. I received anonymous hostile emails from those who blamed me for the company's turbulence. Rumors circulated that I had acted out of revenge for my bonus cut rather than legitimate concern. But for every negative reaction, there were colleagues who quietly expressed their support and respect. "You did what many of us wanted to do, but were afraid to," James told me during a late night of work. "You reminded us what this company is supposed to stand for." 3 months after the tumultuous investor call, Richard Hammond returned to Horizon Technologies on a part-time basis. Though not resuming the CEO role, he took a position as chairman of the board, providing guidance and maintaining connections with key stakeholders. His first official act was to call me to his office. "Athena," he greeted me warmly. "Thank you for coming, Please have a seat. Despite the reduced schedule, Richard looked much more like his old self. The color returned to his face and the spark back in his eyes. I wanted to speak with you personally before making an announcement to the company, he began. The board has completed its review of the events during Bradley's tenure, as well as the independent audit requested by Artemis Capital. The findings confirm what we already knew. You acted with extraordinary integrity in a nearly impossible situation. I nodded, unsure where this was leading. Richard continued. The board has unanimously decided to offer you the position of Chief Financial Officer. Diane is doing excellent work as interim CEO and has agreed to continue in that role for the foreseeable future. We believe you and Diane will make an exceptional leadership team. I was momentarily speechless. The CFO position had been vacant for over a year, with Richard handling many of those responsibilities himself before his heart attack. It was a significant promotion that would place me on the executive leadership team with substantial influence over company direction. I am honored, I finally managed. But are you sure? There has been a lot of controversy, and some people still see me as the person who derailed the investment round. Richard shook his head firmly. Those people are wrong. You saved this company from a disaster that would have eventually destroyed it. Victoria Harrington herself made that clear when she told the board that your actions were the primary reason Artemis is still considering investment. Companies that prioritize integrity over expediency are rare and valuable, she said. I could not agree more. The following week brought a complete restructuring of the executive team. With Diane Foster as CEO and me as CFO, a new leadership approach emerged, one that emphasized transparency, collaboration, and ethical decision-making. James was formally recognized for his technical leadership with an expanded role as CTO, and Madison received long overdue recognition as Chief Human Resources Officer. One of our first acts as a new executive team was to implement a series of governance and transparency policies designed to prevent future misrepresentations. All investor materials would undergo multiple reviews to ensure accuracy. Financial reports would include more detailed risk assessments. Most importantly, we established an ethics committee with representatives from various departments to provide oversight on major decisions. Another priority was addressing the bonus inequities created under Bradley's leadership. After a thorough review, we not only restored the unfairly reduced bonuses, but provided additional compensation to those most severely impacted. It was a significant expense, but one that demonstrated the company's renewed commitment to fairness and recognition of employee contributions. Victoria Harrington became an unexpected ally in our rebuilding efforts. Once the independent audit confirmed that Bradley's misrepresentations were isolated rather than systemic, she took a personal interest in Horizon's governance improvements. She even agreed to serve as an advisor to our newly formed ethics committee, providing an invaluable external perspective. Most companies learn these lessons the hard way after a complete collapse, she told me during one of her visits. Horizon had the extraordinary fortune of having someone willing to speak up before the point of no return. That creates a rare opportunity to build something truly different. Victoria eventually became something of a mentor to me, offering insights from her decades of experience in the financial world. The business landscape is filled with people who will sacrifice long-term sustainability for short-term gains, she observed. True leadership means having the courage to protect the future, even when it costs you in the present. Over the next 6 months, we rebuilt Horizon's reputation methodically. We completed the necessary security audits for our international products, obtained proper insurance coverage, and revised our expansion timeline to ensure quality and compliance. Though our growth was slower than Bradley's ambitious projections, it was built on solid foundations rather than wishful thinking. The investor round eventually closed at $230 million, slightly less than the original target, but more than sufficient for our revised plans. Artemis Capital led the round with Victoria, publicly expressing confidence in Horizon's new leadership and governance structure. Other investors followed her lead, reassured by the company's demonstrated commitment to transparency. On a personal level, The experience transformed me in ways I could never have anticipated. The weeks following the investor call had been among the most stressful of my life. I had suffered anxiety, insomnia, and constant questioning of my decision. Had I done the right thing? Had I destroyed my career? Would the company survive the turbulence I had helped create? Gradually, with support from colleagues who had become true friends, I regained my confidence and found a deeper sense of purpose in my work. Madison was particularly supportive, often checking in during late nights and providing a sounding board for difficult decisions. James, in his quiet way, demonstrated unwavering loyalty, backing me in executive meetings and publicly crediting my financial insights for enabling technical improvements. The experience taught me lessons that no business school could have provided. I learned that integrity is not just a personal virtue, but a business asset that creates sustainable value. I discovered that courage is not the absence of fear, but the determination to act despite it. Most importantly, I realized that one person speaking truth can change the course of an entire organization, for better or worse. During our first all-hands meeting after Richard's return, he invited me to address the company. Standing before hundreds of colleagues, both in person and joining virtually, I felt a profound responsibility to articulate the lessons of our shared experience. The past 6 months have tested Horizon in unprecedented ways. I began. We faced a choice between expedient deception and difficult truth, between short-term appearance and long-term substance. It would have been easier in the moment to remain silent and go along, but that easier path would have led to an inevitable reckoning, one that might have destroyed everything we have built together. I looked out at the faces, watching me from new hires to those who had been with the company from the beginning. What I have learned through this experience is that ethical decisions benefit everyone in the long run, even when they are painful in the moment. The company that stands before you today is stronger, more resilient, and more united in purpose than before. We have been tested and have emerged with a clearer understanding of who we are and what we stand for. As I reflect on this journey, from finance director to CFO, from someone who nearly lost everything to someone helping lead a company renewal, I am grateful for the difficult path that brought us here. Every career will face moments of decision crossroads, where the easy choice and the right choice diverge. In those moments, remember that your integrity is your most valuable asset, one that cannot be replaced once surrendered. Have you ever faced a moment where speaking up felt impossible, but staying silent felt wrong? What did you choose, and how did it change you? Share your story in the comments below. If this account of corporate courage resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of professional integrity prevailing against the odds. Remember, in business and in life, the foundation you build determines how high you can ultimately rise. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to choose integrity when your moment comes.